Apparently, politicians are blackmailing themselves in British Columbia these days. What the hell is going on in British Columbia? So apparently, the leader of the BC Conservatives, John Rustad, is accusing a group of MLAs who split from the party of blackmailing his remaining MLAs and staff. So he told his Conservative caucus that their former colleagues are threatening to release blackmail materials, including secretly recorded phone conversations and text messages. He also says, we will not allow ourselves to be lowered by manipulative, dishonest, and malicious actions of people who see fit to potentially criminally blackmail others. This is sociopathic behavior. Jeez, what the hell is going on there? So, John Rustad doesn't directly name the former Conservatives who are threatening his caucus, but if you're familiar with BC politics, you know who they are. You can put two and two together. He is probably talking about Dallas Brody, Tara Armstrong, and Jordan Keeley. Dallas Brody got expelled from the BC Conservatives in March because of comments she made about residential schools. Tara Armstrong and Jordan Keeley left in solidarity with Dallas Brody, right? Dallas Brody did an interview with Rebel News after the fact, after she was expelled from the Conservative caucus. You might know that Rebel News is far right. I guess that's where you put them on the spectrum. They're not really in favor of categorizing residential schools as a genocide. They seem to also have an issue with land acknowledgements as well. But they're interesting. Rebel News is interesting. There are 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube, think so. Anyways, they had a great interview with Dallas Brody about a month ago where they gave her a chance to explain her own side of the story. I'll play you a short excerpt from that particular interview. Watch. It's interesting.
Many did who saw our reports on your exit. Why did he play that 4-second clip and let the world know that he claimed that you were mocking sexual abuse survivors? And to that, he said the following.
So the issue was, and so when she first came out and talked about the truth, I supported that being out there. That was no problem. I think I would have liked to use some different wording, which is what I tried to encourage her to do. Then she did a video where she was referring to Alia Warbus, who was a member in our caucus, and her grandmother, quite frankly, who was a residential school survivor. And she used a mocking tone and kind of mocked what she was saying and how all of that came forward. And I felt that was wrong. That's inappropriate to do that. And so that's why there was an issue there. It was never anything to do with the facts that came forward, because I agree those are the facts and we do need to make sure that the truth is dealt with.
I don't know Aaliyah very well. I don't know her grandmother. I've never heard her speak of her grandmother before in front of me. It's just, there was nothing about Ms. Warbus that was on my mind when I was on that video talking on that call. I was mocking woke cultural expressionism, which basically says that all truths are valid, and making the point that objective truth is what we need to predicate things on in our society, and that this notion that there are several different truths and they're all equally valid is simply just not true. I do know that if we don't have truth, not his truth, her truth, my grandmother's truth, or, this whole thing about my truth and your truth, my truth. This stuff has to stop. It's like, it's got to be the truth. And that was the point I was making.
The topic of residential schools is obviously a bit sensitive. There are people living with the consequences of that till this day. Now, to be fair, I don't think people gave Justin Trudeau enough credit for how far this country came with truth and reconciliation while he was prime minister. But also, you guys come to this channel for balance, right? So I'll tell you this too. I'll tell you this as well. Part of the reason for the denial of residential school genocide lately is this story right here. You might recall that on May 27, 2021, Roseanne Casimir, chief of the Kamloops Indian Band, announced that ground-penetrating radar had located the remains of 215 missing children in an apple orchard on the site of a former residential school, which was run by the Catholic Church. The story of unmarked graves was widely reported. But since that time, all the evidence that has emerged suggests that the story wasn't true. A New York Post article calls it the biggest fake news story in Canada. The Fraser Institute, in an article published in 2024, says major elements of the Kamloops narrative are either false or highly exaggerated. No unmarked graves have been discovered at Kamloops or elsewhere Not one. As of August 2023, there had been 20 announcements of soil anomalies discovered by ground penetrating radar near residential schools across Canada, but most have not been excavated. So what, if anything, lies beneath the surface remains unknown. Where excavations have taken place, no burials related to residential schools have been found. And so this sparks a new line of discussion. It sparks the question, what really happened in residential schools? There are debates these days about how many children actually died or disappeared in residential schools and how they died. But there are many claims that the numbers we've heard in the media are widely overblown. So that's the other side of that discussion, right? There is obviously the side of empathy and the side of believing residential school survivors. There's also this part as well where people are debating some of the information we have about residential schools. But as I say, this is a sensitive issue. And Dallas Brody represents Vancouver Kilchenna riding, which includes a part of the Musqueam Reserve, that's the First Nation. Her continuing to say some of the things she has said was always going to be problematic. And really, the lack of empathy with which she has spoken about the residential school issue is pretty tactless, if we're being honest, right? Imagine how tactless you have to be for John Rustad, a climate change denying fellow residential school skeptic, to kick you out of his party. That's how weird you have to be. So Dallas Brody, Tara Armstrong, and Jordan Keeley left the Conservative Party. Dallas Brody and Tara Armstrong have now started the One BC Party. So anyways, on this issue of blackmailing her former party colleagues, Dallas Brody said in a statement that John Rustad's letter consists of wild lies and baseless, false, and defamatory accusations about the newly formed One BC Party. Look, as this whole thing unfolds, I can't help but think, thank God these clowns did not win. Thank God these clowns did not win the BC provincial election. They were not that far away from winning the last provincial elections. Some might say they managed to grab defeat from the jaws of victory, really. Sort of like the federal Conservatives in that way. Some of you might not remember this, but John Rustad was actually leading going into the last 2 weeks of the campaign, certainly before the debate. He then released his costed platform showing an even bigger deficit than the BC NDP, and the rest is history. Look, people are still mad at the BC NDP. But the Conservatives just couldn't get out of their own way. They still can't. This is evidence of that, right? It's not even a year since the provincial elections, and the BC Conservatives are coming apart at the seams. And these are the people that are supposed to dethrone the NDP. Like, what a mess. Anyways, that's the story. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you next time. Take care, you guys.